I can't purr like that.
How you doing, folks? Welcome back to Monkey Shine Lab. Today I wanted to kind of talk about a movie that I've watched 3 times. If you're unaware of how I do things with this, I take a movie and I watch it 3 times through, at least 3 times, sometimes more, depending on how difficult it is to get my head around it. And I do that to make sure that I'm not in a bad mood the day that I watch the movie, or that I've got some sort of preloaded feelings or whatever about a film. And one of the movies that I wanted to talk about today is yet another of the Sony Spider-Man universe films. It's called Kraven the Hunter. Yes, that Kraven the Hunter. The film that everybody panned to piss before it even hit the theaters. I guess it's got to be difficult as a filmmaker to be right in the middle of making something, and sometimes these things take years. Right in the middle of making something, and your parent company decides, everything that you're doing right now, it's not going to lead anywhere. That can't be a good way to face the production of your film. But in the case of Kraven the Hunter, I think that what they did was show everybody what a mistake they were making by just offhandedly writing it off, because the company that was making it wrote everything off. It's a good film. In terms of a superhero film, it's something different. And the thing that totally perplexes me every time somebody sees one of these films and says, that's not it, they're not comic book fans. If they were, they would understand that artists change, writers change over the years. Stories and characters can go through some wild, radical changes. I mean, all you got to do is look at the history of Wonder Woman. But talking about Kraven, this was a film that was supposed to contribute another character or two to the Sinister Six films that Sony's still trying to get made. Films like Venom: The Last Dance and Kraven the Hunter are collateral damage in a movie production war that shouldn't be happening. Everybody wants to look at Kraven the Hunter and say that it's a failure. I say that it's a failure on the part of the audience, because they will sit through several Marvel films and then go, oh, I'm so bored, I want something different. Give me characters that aren't overpowered. Give me characters that aren't, give me a movie that's only concentrating on a couple of characters. My brother hates almost all of the MCU films after Iron Man because he says there's just too much going on. There are too many characters. There are fights with 90,000 people on screen. It's too much for him. So I think that Kraven the Hunter is like a film that's kind of made for people like my brother, who don't really need a film about superheroes, but if they do go to see a film about these kinds of things, it's something a little different. But this is what you get for asking the public its opinion, instead of just making art for art's sake, which is what I think that all the filmmakers did on this one. I reviewed Morbius, and I didn't think it was such a bad film in terms of entertainment value. certainly not like my first experience watching the last Fantastic Four film, which came out. My wife and I went to see that in the theater, and I felt eternally guilty. My wife turned around and said, "You know what? It was an entertaining film. I liked it." And it made me think about this. It made me think about the fact that comic book nerds and nerds in general are going to sit in judgment of this or Star Wars or, whatever else is made under the conglomerate Disney thing. And they're going to bitch and moan about it because it doesn't fit their personal vision. I find that hilarious because most comic books don't fit anyone's personal vision but the writer. Okay? The art is conceived by a penciler and filled in by a colorist and etc. These things change all the time, so I don't understand why you can look at a film and not just say, well, that's one version of it. I guess, as I've said in these movie reviews before, being a fan of Doctor Who, I didn't have a problem with actors changing mid-role. Being a fan of Godzilla was not always a bad guy. Godzilla was not always a good guy. Godzilla changed all the damn time. You can't have it your way. And I think that when you look at art, you need to consider the interpretation of it as part of the quality. And if you don't appreciate the interpretation, that's one thing. But to call a film garbage is quite another. And people will go after films like this on Rotten Tomatoes. They'll go after it on IMDb, and they will strike the star rating down as hard as they can because they feel like they need to make their hurt feelings known. And what that does is that it kind of poisons the well for other people that are going to maybe go sit through a movie. So in terms of Kraven, here's what I want to talk about. It's over 2 hours long, but it keeps moving. The film never bogs down in terms of long discussions. The plot is nothing substantial or surprising. But anybody who reads a comic book should know that most of the time in Marvel, it has some sort of problem with the parent, or it has some sort of, death of a parent, whatever, to create this moment of transition for the main character. The film does introduce about 6 different quote-unquote superpowered people. They're all very interesting and very different. They even introduce other characters that would be fantastic for their films coming up. But we won't see any of that now. We won't see what happens with Kraven. We won't see what happens with his brother. We won't see what happens with Calypso. I mean, it's really kind of unfortunate. I think that you ought to sit down and watch this film, or any film, really. Watch it for yourself. Don't read reviews. Don't listen to movie reviewers before you sit through the film itself for yourself. Kraven is a perfect example. They gave away the first 12 minutes of this film on YouTube when it was being put into the theaters in hopes of stirring something amidst all the negativity. In doing so, they kind of, they gave you the first 12-minute action sequence of Kraven going undercover to a Soviet gulag. There's a lot of ham-fisted things about this that I can't deny, right down to the use of like Russian music while they are driving through snow. You know, like there's a lot of silly bits, and there's a lot of typical Marvel humor that's rolled in there that you can almost, on my third view, I was like, yeah, they filmed that specifically for the commercial. It's not a perfect film, but it's not a piece of cinematic shit. And unfortunately, what you're going to see if you watch reviews is you're going to watch how it was a failure, doomed before it began filming because Sony doesn't understand their license. Ugh. Give me a break. If we were to all like the same things, and if we were to all hate the same things, there would be no need for critics. And there would be no need for a lot of different things, you know? But again, I would say that this film is worth sitting through. I've sat through it 3 times, and probably I'll buy a copy of it when I can find it cheap. I'm not going to go run out and buy a $25 Blu-ray. And unfortunately, Disney likes to hang out their shit, even the stuff that Sony puts out. They like to hang that shit out to the nth degree for the pricing. I think it's still like a $25 Blu-ray. Doesn't make any sense to me because they're trying to recoup some money here. But if you have Netflix, you can watch it for free. Well, you pay for Netflix, so you're not watching it for free. But you could watch a lot worse films for 2 hours. I reviewed a film that was under 2 hours recently, Wolfman, which had moments in it that dragged forever. I mean, 5-minute conversations that seemed 20 minutes long. This movie doesn't have any of that. Keeps it moving, keeps it fresh, keeps it light, keeps it entertaining. And I liked the Rhino. I liked all of the different characters that they brought forward and how they did it. Check it out. It's not a bad film. All right, folks, that's what I got for you today. Thank you very much for coming out here to Monkey Shine Lab. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, please leave a comment as to what you don't like. I read everything and I try to respond. Thanks again, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye-bye.